Hi everyone, I'm Louisa Wilson. I'm Managing Director of Randstad Sourceright's Enterprise Customer Acceleration team. And a big welcome to our first Talent Navigator series of 2022. We're going to officially launch our 2022 Talent Trends Research and the top trends that are shaping up for the year ahead for all of the human capital leaders that are joining us. I'm sure that everyone listening today will appreciate this is another year like no other. I do hope maybe within the next couple of years that might be the last time I ever need to say that. But we've certainly been on a roller coaster for the last 2 years. And if there's something really important that I've taken away from those last 2 years is the importance of deep human connection, both live and virtual, as we know the world of work we work in, to really maintain that momentum as we drive back and have that energy to sustain growth into this year. I recently read a wonderful article by Hubert Joly, who was the former CEO of Best Buy, and it's called The Secret Ingredient of Thriving Companies, Human Magic. He talks about where a fertile company environment is one where employees have a very strong sense of purpose, which gives them a spring in their steps to really drive forward every day. It's where they can become their biggest, best, brightest versions of themselves. And it's this kind of environment where he really talks to where that unleashes what he calls as human magic. And it really can create the most amazing results. Mike, you know that's our theme for this year, so I think it's some time to unleash some human magic with all of the human capital leaders that are joining us today, because it is certainly a year to look ahead, to recharge those talent batteries, to refresh and renew your strategy by putting people deeply first as part of your strategy. Because I think it's no surprise to everyone that skilled talent is really in high demand and very hard to find right now. And it's companies that treat their workers like people, again, workers like people, really attracting and engaging and nurturing that human magic that are going to emerge the winners into 2022 and beyond. So look, I look forward to shortly welcoming our special guests today, Michael Smith and Natalie Lemire, because we're going to delve into some top insights with them in terms of the trends. But we do also want to have a great conversation with you. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them in the chat function. And during the session, at the end of the session today, we're going to craft up some questions to share with Natalie and Mike, put them a little bit on their toes in terms of what you're seeing out there in the marketplace today. So a really big welcome to Natalie Lemire. She is the Director of the HR Centre of Excellence at Air Canada. And I met Natalie earlier this week, and I have to say she's one of those most engaging and inspirational leaders and a seasoned professional with more than 30 years experience in the hospitality and airline industry. She's known for driving brand growth, maximising operational and service excellence, and driving financially impactful results. Under her leadership, the Air Canada Talent Acquisition team has won the prestigious Candy Awards for 5 years in a row, recognised amongst the top 50 organisations in North America. And right now, Natalie, we know also that you're ensuring Air Canada is back in the air flying with the right talent needed to connect people together all throughout the world. A big welcome to Natalie, and Natalie, we look forward to having a great conversation with you shortly. Over to Mike Smith. Mike is our global CEO of Randstad Sourceright, and he brings with him a 16-year career at Randstad and a huge wealth of experience in the talent acquisition industry. And I think every day, Mike, we're learning something new as we look to help clients grow their talent right across the world. Mike joined us back in January 2005 as a graduate recruitment executive, and now you've seen him develop in leadership and operational roles all throughout the world, from Asia Pacific across to Europe, and now globally from his hometown in Texas. What I think Mike brings for us today is an extreme passion for purpose, people and technology to really look at how we can drive innovation and growth towards all of the goals and ambitions that we have as organizations today. So moving forward, let's have a look at this talent trends research. It's now in its 7th year, and it provides insights for human capital leaders really looking into deeply driving business agility and results with their talent strategies. Just a little bit of background on the research. It's the feedback and opinions and insight of 900 C-suite and human capital leaders from 18 countries across the world, representing global, international and regional organizations. What I think is really important to look at is that the survey panel that we survey are C-suite and human capital business leaders who influence both strategic and operational decisions for their organization. So it's really nice today to get that level of insight into what you're all thinking. So moving forward, what are you thinking? What we found is that this year's research has found a very deep people-centric mindset among all of the human capital leaders out there. And an overwhelming 84% of you say that your organization is more focused on talent experience than in the past. But at the same time, just 45% of human capital leaders agree that talent acquisition is about value creation versus cost savings. I'd like to take a bit of a pause there because, Mike, I think when we first saw this, we were a little bit shocked. Is that the truth? Because I'll reverse that stat for you. 55% of human capital leaders think that talent acquisition is about cost savings than value creation. So I'd say if there's a challenge for all of us on this session today is to delve into that, because what we probably can understand is that through the difficulties that we've all witnessed in the labour market throughout 2021, we can deeply appreciate that you've been extremely occupied with emergencies and operational firefighting, and it's taken that eye off long-term planning. So I really look forward to deep diving with Natalie and Mike in terms of how do you keep that one eye on running the business for today while keeping that one eye looking towards the future and what that means to your people and business strategies. So moving forwards, we're going to take a look at these top 10 talent trends. And I love our head of thought leadership. She says we always should be able to take away 3 things to remember. So our big 3 themes of this year's talent trends is number 1, recharge your talent acquisition strategies. Number 2, refresh the talent experience. And number 3, renew skills across your workforce. And underpinning of that, how are you really driving HR technology and innovation to create people, culture, and productivity accelerators? We are going to deep dive into 5 trends today. So I'm not going to cover off all of these trends, but I just wanted to share a couple of few insights of the other 5 trends we're not going to cover, just to get us all thinking. And we look forward to our follow-up series to dive further into these trends. So let's look at trend number 2 under recharge. Passionately protect diversity. 86% of all the human capital leaders out there say DE&I is embedded in their talent strategies and integral to everything that they do. But when it comes to having a look at practice versus theory, only 43% say their hiring practices supported the diversity goals in 2021. That's another pause moment as we all start to think about how are we driving the most inclusive recruiting practices to drive out the widest focus on the talent that we look to bring into our organisation. So just a key trend to have a think about. The next one is under recharge, is trend number 3, and really integrating market and workforce data for that intelligent advantage. This year's research showed that 73% of you out there are really looking at investing in analytics. And that comes back to, I think, running the business for today and having the insight and information to be able to understand how to drive towards the future. And there's one key challenge around there, I think, as organizations are still looking at how do you bring all your analytics into a single view to really create meaning for you to create that level of insight moving forward. And then number 5 is all about inspiring creativity and purpose in the age of hybrid working. I'm sure all of us would agree it's much, we think it's harder to create innovation and creativity when we're all working virtual. But it's been amazing to see companies continue to thrive and grow regardless of where people sit. And again, that really encourages us all to continue to look beyond those traditional geographic boundaries to talent, to who is the best talent that we need to drive our businesses forward. And finally, if we look under renew skills across your workforce, trend number 8 is all about ramping up your own internal talent marketplace. If we've learned anything, it's how critical internal mobility, reskilling, and the growth of our people to meet those future challenges will help us beat that big scary ogre that's sitting across all of us called talent scarcity. So I don't want to talk anymore because I think it's time that we welcome our special guests for today, Natalie and Mike, to really deep dive into the trends, or the 5 trends that we're going to cover. So let's have a think of this. Mike and Natalie, I'd love to reflect back on this stat. that 45% believe that talent acquisition is more about value creation than cost savings. So it's that 55% believe it's more about cost savings. I think we can all agree there's been quite a toll over the last 2 years, and we all need to get back to growth. But what we have seen, that people are determined to take charge of their careers and their lives. And today, talent truly is in the driving seat, as companies really have to rethink and have a look at creative ways to attract, engage, and retain their employees. So Natalie, we know it's a tightrope that you're balancing, you know, the new demands of talent today versus some long-established company practices and culture. So let's ask you the first question, Natalie. As this year continues to be challenging, how are you ensuring that long-term value to the business?
Good. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you to our partner, Randstad, for inviting me to join this session today. I hope whatever I'll have to share with you about the Air Canada story will be a little bit inspirational, but you know, like any other industry, our industry, airline, have been highly impacted by COVID, as we know. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. But fast track where we are today, we are in the rebuild of Air Canada. And knowing where we came from to where we are today, I think we've made tremendous strive. Our people work behind this. And what really, really helped us through this pandemic as a company is really, you know, our core values as an organization, which has been, you know, our people and their sense of purpose. So we've been capitalizing on this, and of course, you know, focusing on what the human capital and the centricity of customer that is part of our DNA at Air Canada. It's been extremely helpful through this journey, but there's definitely a long road ahead. During the pandemic, we had to release, we went from a company size of 36,000 people to 20,000 people. So a lot of people had to be released within the organization, and now we're within the rebuild mode. So really our key focus will continue to be people and purpose, and I'll be happy to share with you different initiatives that we have in place to support that going forward with a short-term and long-term vision.
And Natalie, if you think about that people and purpose, what are a couple of things that you really focused on to, you know, rebuild your workforce? Like you said, it's going from 36,000 to 20,000, but you're now ramping back into growth. What is at the heart of some of those initiatives that you're focused on?
Sure. So short term, really what we looked at was what are the elements that are meaningful to the candidates today and also to our active employees. So we kind of looked at, okay, what could we leverage quickly as a short-term vision? So we came up with 5 criteria that we think, and our employee told us loud and clear through surveys and different focus group we had. They told us what is critical for us is the work-life balance. We want to make sure that, you know, with the pandemic, we learned how to work remotely. That was never at the center of kind of our business model at Air Canada, because we're very operational. So people kind of said, we need to find ways to offer more, work-life balance in our day-to-day. So we said, okay, fine. Instead of waiting 6 months to have access to your flight passes, now one of the benefits you have when you join the organization will offer you flight passes as of day one. So that was definitely something interesting for everybody. And we increase the allotment of flight passes for our active employees. So the work-life balance, and like we say in our industry, we work hard, we play hard. So, and that was true. And we kind of leverage, you know, that kind of statement for those of us that have been in this industry for a long time. The flexibility, obviously, are critical for people, flexibility of schedule. So we introduced some flex days. We introduced wellness credits. So we already had a very robust wellness program, but we introduced additional credits so people, you know, could invest their credit into financial wellness as well. So it's not only well-being and, you know, a dietitian or a psychologist. We really thought about their financial security for now and the future. The career growth, obviously, you know, critical as a retention strategy and attraction strategy as well. So we'll make sure that our people had an understanding of where were the opportunities, even though they were entering the organization with an entry-level position in some case. You know, they had opportunity for growth, and we shared a lot of stories that, you know, our executive team, you know, started into an entry-level position and work their way up the organization. So tangible example of what it meant. And we designed a program called career pathing. And the last element that was also very dear to the heart of the individual was, I want to know where I fit in the bigger picture. I want to know where my contribution is going to be. And, I want to keep constantly be learning. So we said, okay, so we introduce an agility program where we're rotating people across the organization, to make sure that we kind of reskilling people with additional knowledge. And we also double our tuition fees. So that was kind of the short-term vision. And the long-term vision, we have a brand new program we just launched, actually. It's called the ECX program, our project. It's called Enhance Customer Experience. But in the world of Air Canada, our customer, we're talking about our internal and external customers. So it's really, and that includes our candidates, of course. There's still a lot of confidential element behind that, so I cannot share all the details with you today, but we're very excited about it. And this is a corporate initiative across the entire organization. And we really think that that's going to bring us to the next level, to entice our candidates, to retain our active employees, and to engage our customer as we're rebuilding our airline. And really what we're looking for, if I want to give you a little bit of a snippet, if you're curious, is that we want to personalize the journey at every single touch point. So that's kind of the bigger picture behind this initiative.
Thanks, Madeleine. I think you're drawing on quite a few themes now in terms of what we've really seen out of the research this year. And, I think there's many companies out there where your candidates are your consumers. And how do you really drive that experience right, a consumer-led experience right through your people experience in the company. So I think that sounds fantastic. And I love another thing that you mentioned there is all about how, individuals really need to passionately understand how they contribute to the success of the company, what their role is that they contribute every day. So I took that way. So Mike, what you've seen, I guess, over the last couple of years, and particularly in the last 6 to 12 months, people's needs are changing. A lot of people are quitting their jobs and changing roles. Some are taking retirement early. Some people are just making that choice to stay out of the labour market. So companies do face a bit of a daunting task as we do look ahead. So Mike, if we look at what's happening, how are organizations gaining a clear understanding of the needs and expectations of people that really make their business thrive? And what are they doing with that insights? How are they translating that into practical programs, just like Natalie mentioned?
Sure, Lou. Let me break it down into three answers, if that's okay. I think that the first element is the definition of what is a thriving business. And I think when you think about people, when you have an engaged and motivated workforce that's passionate about delivering on the purpose of the company, well, then you land in a situation where typically you can associate a thriving business with those circumstances. So the question then becomes, how do you find out whether your workforce is engaged? And with that data that you get from the mechanisms in which you can capture that data, what are the actions that we're seeing customers put into place at the moment? I think there's two probably broad buckets here. You have your standard ways of finding out what are the needs and expectations of people's, whether they be survey tools that allow you to measure the engagement of your workforce, how they're feeling about particular initiatives. You can ask questions around diversity, work-life balance, etc. And then in addition to that, you have the ability to do kind of skip meetings, proactive stay interviews, running small boot camps with senior leaders, with how should our workforce operate in this current environment. Within RSR, we have the ability to kind of take data from our Peakon and surveys, put it into our HR system and run some predictive analytics that show where people are becoming disengaged and how we can proactively mitigate that. That works well. And then you have the more advanced stuff where you can do what I call HR exhaust data analysis, where you're taking how much time are people spending on emails, how much time are they spending across different systems, what are the things that they're continually asking help for, and then addressing them. What you do with all that data is obviously the key to making sure that you're basically solving the problem of what the needs and expectations are. And we see people doing that in a lot of different ways at the moment. I think the first is a lot of organizations recognizing that the archaic operating systems that they have at the moment are impacting on people's needs and expectations for autonomy and their energy. And we see some organizations being in a situation where They're now being very brave about pushing decision making closer to the lower levels of the organization to empower those employees to have more of an impact. An example of that is one customer we're working with just last week decided to move the decision making on hiring of FTEs two levels lower within the organization. And as a result of that, you see an associated increase in customer satisfaction and centricity, et cetera. It is scary, but customers are doing it at the moment. And then you see organizations getting pretty bold about things like mandatory time off. We knew that the McKinsey survey that was quite famous last year said on average, each employee is working 48 minutes more per day. How can we combat that? You see organizations like Nike saying, we are going to give everyone in our organization a week off. Brave, bold, fantastic for kind of changing the industry. And then I think lastly, you see organizations taking that data and doing things like mandatory assistance with healthy meal delivery to the homes, errand cleaning. How can we take some of those kind of time-saving activities just to help people get a bit more of a better balance? So a couple of examples there of how to get the data and what do you do with it.
Thanks, Mike. And you can see that level of data-driven, that combination of how to use that insight to really steer your strategies and your business for the long term. And Mike, you know, I've recently really enjoyed working with you and the team to even just do simple things like look back at what the purpose is of the organization, reflect on it, and get leaders' input on how to shape that. And I think some of my most inspiring days over the last 2 weeks has been sharing jam sessions or creative sessions with leaders on what's at the heart of the business. And I think that comes back to understanding your business, what's happening in your business, and then how you're translating that into a lot of meaning for people as we move forward in terms of our engagement strategies. I think that's a really good segue if we move forward to the next trend, skipping through, which is all around, you know, I know that we used to talk about a lot in the past around customer obsession. Today, we're going to talk about talent obsession and all of our people obsession and how we obsess over our talent experiences to really create a game-changing employer brand and experience. If we look, you know, we know that the pandemic has brought forward some great terms, and one of those is the Great Resignation, but it's also allowed many leaders to really re-examine their relationship with between people and their employers, and we've just heard a lot of that from Natalie and Mike. So it's probably no surprise that 84% of leaders are more focused on talent experience than ever before. And like Natalie mentioned, that deep level of consumer-like experience that's applied from every touch point, from when you're identifying potential talent right through your experience and across the employee lifecycle. Really interestingly, what we also found is that there's a significant investment going into employer brand, maybe not too surprising based on the level of talent need in the market right now. But what we've also seen is employer brands become far more inclusive of all the talent types. And there was a 28-point increase up to 62% of organizations investing in their employer brand to directly engage and attract contingent talent. So, Mike, if we think about those sorts of that sort of research, how are you seeing companies really reshape their talent experience and employee value propositions and better socialize them to reach all the talent that you need to engage today?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Lou, there's what I would call still some minor differences in the value proposition, but we see a general convergence of what we call the talent brand for an organization. And they recognize that anyone who touches the company, whether it be a gig worker, a contingent worker, a vendor, a partner, a permanent talent, needs to walk away with a really positive experience. It's gone beyond that kind of, this particular part of our brand is only available to have a special experience for permanent talent. That's been left behind. And secondly, we see that talent brand needs to align with all elements of the consumer brand. And I think we see particular movement of this in the financial services space, where organizations are trying to make applying for a job with those organizations, no matter what that job is, as easy as opening a bank account online, et cetera. And organizations becoming much smarter and aware of when a particular individual has a negative experience in applying for a role, well, that then goes on to affect their willingness to utilize their products and services, et cetera. I think in particular, we see some organizations making some very heavy investments in reaching talent and delivering the right messages to that type of talent. And the shift to what we would call an omni-channel campaign, even for internal talent to bring jobs to them, is really starting to gather pace. I mean, you can get to some very granular detail here around the target audience that you want to speak to, the degree of activism, engagement, location, seniority, drivers, what speaks to those candidates emotionally and intellectually. Attracting and engaging talent whilst still needing to be very human touch is 100% becoming way more dynamic and at an advanced marketing-led effort. And the organizations that are going to win that war for talent are investing ahead of the curve in that.
Mike, and if we move across to Natalie now. Natalie, I know recruiting is ramped right up at Air Canada as you're looking to put lots of customers in the planes to take them all across the world. So what steps is Air Canada taking to really look at how your brand is standing out to the talent pools you look to engage with? And really, like I love listening to you before around that proactive experience to show candidates are valued even before they start.
Mm-hmm. I think if I was to summarize a little bit what the main driver and differentiator for us is that the pre-pandemic, we used to promote and offer roles to candidates under the Air Canada brand. So our brand was extremely strong. We knew that from an attraction perspective, it was, I have to admit, it was somewhat easy for us. And we were very lucky that way because we're part of the top brand in Canada. Fast track, 24 months. Right now, we're promoting our opportunities extremely differently. So right now, what we're doing is that we're promoting a career in the airline industry, and we're selling our brand as to why candidates should be considering Air Canada as an employer of choice. So you see the difference, and for us, it's forcing us to think differently, be very creative. And it's when you start to reflect and you realize, wow, we have a lot to offer, but it's just we never had to over promote it before. It was kind of taken for granted a little bit. So what this pandemic did is that I think we're a much stronger organization right now from a talent and recruitment perspective, because now we kind of leverage a lot of the program that were already in place that we just they were there, but the candidate would discover the benefits attached to our brand as they were becoming an employee of Air Canada. So we kind of took that forward, and we're saying, no, we need to bring this in the upfront, plus the enhancement that we have done, travel passes day one, wellness credit, and everything else I talked about. So that's the main shift for us. And when you think about it, it's really attached to our core values as an organization, linked to the people, of course, putting people first. And then the sense of purpose to say to people, have you ever considered a career in your industry? Where before we used to say, we have a cost center opportunity, or we have a management role under revenue management to offer you. Right now, the dialogue is completely different and very engaging.
It's interesting, Natalie, that when you talk about that, because that's also the shift in the dynamics is what's happened over the last 2 years, when many employees, like you said, they've released or moved on to different roles, and they're creating a new sense of role and purpose for themselves and developing new skills. So it sounds like that you're really also trying to look beyond traditional skill sets and traditional talent communities and really tapping into new communities that are excited by the airline industry. And I think when you said before, is that kind of, it is an airline where it works hard but plays hard, and I think that's where how to uniquely bring talent in that environment. Now, if you were to think about it, if you've been reshaping that brand, more focus on industry dynamics and really then what that means for joining Air Canada, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things you think are most memorable in your employer brand today for candidates to remember?
Wow. Maybe we should ask the candidate.
Yeah, we'll have to find one.
No, but I think for us, it's all about, we still have a very sexy industry, I would say. It's how we can market this to the open community. I know that because we've been highly impacted by COVID, a lot of people, it created some kind of concern for the people as it relates to the stability of our airline or the industry in general. But what has been interesting is it's all about the talking points when we're engaging dialogue with the candidates and comparing to any other industry that were probably less impacted because of our growth that's going to happen so fast. And just to put things in context for you, by June 15, 2022, we're going to be operating 90% of our flight schedule pre-pandemic. So we're going to go back to that 36,000, people, kind of employee at Air Canada to make this business run. The demand is skyrocket. People haven't traveled for 24 months, so the demand is there. So what we want to do with this is that we would really want to tell our people is that in terms of growth opportunity vis-a-vis their personalized career, I mean, there's going to be opportunities much greater than in any other type of organization. So a little bit more risk at the upfront, but for big opportunities down the line. So that's really how we're selling this, through the environment of the career and the growth. And we have all kind of internal program to promote that. So it's not only kind of just a proposition without a meaningful and tangible, concrete program behind. It's selling points that we leverage, but we carry through as we onboard our new candidates into the Air Canada family.
That's a lot of growth, Natalie, as you just said, to 16,000 people joining with many varied and different careers. So I can really deeply appreciate how you're really looking at that talent experience, because that's going to be so central to that deep connections you create from candidate to onboarding to growth in the organization. So let's move forward to the next trend, because what I think I'm getting this sense of very deep personal people connection today, if no one else is, but really is that focus on how to create a culture of empathy with those deep, authentic human connections. And research has shown us that a positive culture that focuses on empathy is much more likely to lead to greater retention and job satisfaction, and has a more durable effect on morale than pay. And I think, again, I know that many organizations out there are probably feeling the stresses and the pains of salary inflation today. So it's good for us to think about, like what Natalie has said, how are you driving those deep connections to move beyond and outside of those pains around pay? And when we asked organizations all about how are they really delivering that talent experience, 73% believe that putting personal well-being first, and Mike mentioned a lot to that, really using data to really and insight to understand what people really need today, is important to job applicants as much as to people when it comes to understanding the cultures that they want to work for. So Natalie, bear all of that in mind, and I think you've talked a lot about this, but for you personally, even, what does empathy at work look like when it's authentic and core to a people-first culture?
Well, I guess we're lucky because the nature of our industry, we're already very customer-centric. So it's part of our DNA. We're there, we're moving thousands of people around in a day, and the customer experience has been, everything that we do, where we have the customer in the forefront of our priorities. So it was definitely part of our DNA, but what we've used a lot during the pandemic and still today, we have some guiding principle at Air Canada, and it's called the flight path. So we use this for, again, our internal or external customers, and they consist of 4 guiding principles. So we have treat everybody with care and class. So it seemed kind of a very blanket statement, but again, when the stress is high, when people, sometimes there's good days, bad days, no matter what, there's certain set of behaviors that we expect with our customer, with our active employees, and of course, our future employees or candidates. So care and class have been one of our principles. Walking a mile in the customer's shoes. So again, flipping the table, trying to understand, sometimes you have to conduct so many interviews in a day. We know our recruiters are under tremendous pressure, repeating the question or the information over. But if you flip the table and you understand that it's critical, this candidate you have in front of you will make a very important decision vis-a-vis their career to join your organization or not, right? It brings a whole different kind of perspective on the nature of your job and the purpose of your job as well. We have a gloating-hearted hospitality, of course. And this is not only, like the famous open door policy. So how does it look like? Making yourself available for the customer, for the candidates. People, sometimes there is certain meetings are not scheduled in your agenda, your busy agenda, but it's the right thing to do to make yourself available, because it might not be your priority, but it could be the priority of the employee of a candidate. So all the, make them feel that no matter what they need, you're there to support them. And win as one Air Canada. And that seemed very simple, but collaboration, open communication, and transparency have been key for us to emerge from, this pandemic. And it's going to continue to be a critical factor in the rebuild of our Canada. Things are moving fast. The volume of work is extremely high. There is some hard commitment. We're already selling tickets to passengers, right? So the hard reality is that if there's a couple that was supposed to get married in 2020, they postponed their wedding plan in 2022 to go to Venice in July, we need to take them there. And that's the best. Those are impacting people's lives. So when we're saying, tangible winning as One Air Canada, it's everybody, including our partners, because we're not alone in this journey, and not only the recruitment partners. Air Canada has a lot of partners to make the machine work. And that's kind of where we're saying winning as One Air Canada is critical. And we know that. So those are the kind of key principal drivers that have helped us emerge from, the pandemic, and will continue to drive our roadmap to succeed and get where we need to be, which is really our next critical milestone for us, is this famous timeline of June 15. And that's what we're working on right now.
So it sounds like a big deadline, Adeline. We've got to get the couple to Venice. As you said, that's a deeply personal human connection that you're making moving forward. So, Mike, let's ask you a question, because we know it's heated out there. Natalie's mentioned that Air Canada is growing by 16,000 people within the next very short amount of period of time. But we know that competition for great talent is pretty fierce. What are some really effective ways that you are seeing organizations deliver that greater transparency that Natalie mentioned throughout their recruiting process, so people can really get to know the company culture, because it's become so important, and the workplace that they look to join? Are you seeing anything unique out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think in particular, organizations are recognizing that no matter where someone leaves the process, firstly, you want that candidate going away having a positive experience with the brand, similar to what we spoke about earlier. I am seeing organizations make a move to want to offer much greater transparency at the start of the process, and that is by linking to their Glassdoor page, by showing examples of individuals who have worked with the organization in different facets of employment, whether it being contingent, working from home, hybrid, working remotely, etc. And the transparency is going a level deeper than what it normally would. So, for example, that ability to kind of say, this is how long the process takes on average. Here's the different steps that we go through. Here's what you can expect at each stage of the process. Here's where we're going to give you some feedback. Here's our salary bandings indicatively for the role based on the skills. And this idea about proactively managing those expectations up front, as well as providing a human available to speak to them during that process, we see really having positive impacts on candidates' feedback on the experience of what that's like to work for that company and go through that process. And then the alignment post-hire of how did you find the process? What could we do better? And genuinely collating that information and looking for ways in which you can implement those kind of 1% improvements that help the flow through of efficiency and quality of candidates through that funnel. A lot of time being spent there, and it is making a difference.
Mike, knowing you're the tech guy that you are, I thought you were going to talk about VR and AR and how companies are investing in you in different ways also for people to actually directly experience the experience from wherever they are in the world. So you surprised me there, Mike. But I do know that technology is also playing a very strong role in connecting, and organizations are deeply investing in different types of technology, not only to connect people in different working environments, but bring that experience through. Mike, anything interesting you're seeing coming to the fore around that?
Yeah, look, I would say that honestly, the AR and VR stuff is still in the hype cycle at the moment. Lots of organizations in the situations where they're exploring what and how that could look like for organizations. We saw more recently a couple of large professional consulting organizations offering almost like a choose your own adventure style interview, where you got asked questions by hiring managers and how you answered them led to you to a different element of the assessment, which had great uptake. But then we see simple technology like a company that we work with called Predictive Hire that offers every single candidate that applies for a job an interview. and that interview is based on the skills that are required for that particular role. And every single individual who goes through that interview gets personalized feedback as to what they've done well during the interview and areas that they think that they need to do better on. I think that the scores for all of the clients that we work with on that technology is 8 and 9 out of 10 in terms of candidate experience. So just little things at the start of the funnel that can really help. And then obviously lots of talent acquisition organizations engaging their internal marketing teams to create automated and nurtured candidate flows of specific messages per line of business to keep that candidate warm, to keep them excited about going through that next stage of the process. But AR, VR, still a bit of a hype in my opinion. Lots more of a focus on giving back to the candidate as a result of them investing their time in the process.
So all of our Randstad Sourceright listeners out there, still a little bit of a hype around the AR and VR. But Mike, I also think it's interesting. We deeply also have to appreciate the role hiring managers play in connecting, engaging, and really converting great talent to our organizations. I sometimes think they're the sleeping giants of our employer brand, as I like to say, because they need to be turned on to engage. And I had a wonderful experience this week with a candidate where I felt that the candidate interviewed me, and I think that's perfect because at the end of the day, the candidate is really looking to get to know us and our business, who we are and our culture. And I think it's perfect. All of us as hiring managers should be very open to being interviewed ourselves today because it's that reverse flip for talent. We have a bit of a quiet audience. Natalie and Mike are really keen to take some questions. We will be able to fit some in. So please don't hesitate to pop some questions in the chat and we'll be able to facilitate those as we move through. But I am going to move forward to the next trend. And for anyone out there that knows the Challenger methodology, I may be about to enter all of us into the valley of despair, if we all know the Challenger. But it's great that we have two market leaders here that are going to help us climb out of that, because this is some pain points some human capital leaders are feeling. So talent scarcity, no surprise, is cited as one of the biggest pain points of this year. That actually comes second to HR technology strategy. And I think, Mike, we've talked about that complexity out there when it comes to HR tech and how to navigate that. So that comes in at 29%. And that's closely followed, both of those pain points are followed by talent leaving their companies, which I think we're all privy of that, that great resignation. A lot of organizations, about 1/3 of their organizations are looking to move. But let's go a little bit deeper into that valley. If we look at the result of talent scarcity, 39% say time to fill has risen significantly. 37% say they can't seem to hire and retain their own recruiters. 36% are suffering higher than normal recruiting costs. How are we feeling, Natalie and Mike? 1/4 say they've experienced a reduction in profitability due to talent scarcity that you can see there, and they've had to reduce their level of service to customers. And Natalie, thinking about what you've just said before, if we can't get enough talent, you can't get enough planes in the sky to fly people where they need to be. And 30% as a result of talent scarcity have adjusted their business outlook. So that's all a bit grim, but I think many organizations are therefore, and I'd love to hear from Natalie today, thinking very creatively about their talent and recruitment strategies to really quickly gain the skills they need to perform their work. So Mike, a quick question for you first. Where should organizations start if they want to rethink job requirements to widen their talent pool? Because today you've got to look beyond the traditional boundaries, the traditional skills needed in your company, and find that potential talent. So Mike, what are organizations doing?
Yeah, maybe I can touch on just a couple of points before we delve into that question, Lou. And I think the first one is challenging organizations on when was the last time that they looked at their job requirements, rewrote them or challenged them based on the understanding of how much the current world has changed at the moment. I think organizations are notoriously bad at using this archaic job description that's 5 years old and using that to sell to the outside world. There's also the comment that we should be way more skills focused other than just kind of job requirements focused at the moment, but let's not open that Pandora box today. I think firstly, this is where talent analytics can play a really powerful role. For example, we know in the US that requesting an MBA for a role, on average, decreases application rates from minority ethnicities by upwards of 25%. So using that talent analytics engine or insights from your own team, from a partner, to understand, should this really be part of the job requirement? Is it a need? Is it a want? Why is it? Why does it need to be on there? And how is it impacting application rates from not only diverse applications, but people who have the capability to do the job? Pragmatically, we as an organization for the last 6 or 7 years have really tried to have our talent advisors with our clients' line of business constructively and positively challenge line managers on how they think about getting work done, and ignoring the internal policies of an organization of how work should get done, but coming with data around, okay, what's the cost of not having this job done? Have you considered contingent or a freelance position? What could we do this permanently? What's the cost or revenue leakage implications of doing this particular channel, et cetera, et cetera? That's been a really tough challenge for us to convince our customers of that. And what we've seen gain more traction more recently is convincing customers to say, let's pick a range of roles that you think have the capability to be delivered from multiple vehicles of getting work done. Statement of work provider, gig, freelance, temporary talent, job share, permanent, etc. And let's advertise the capability externally in the market and internally to say, we're open to looking at different ways of getting this job done. And then pragmatically, we're presenting that talent to the hiring manager. And it is the concrete presentation of high quality talent, irrespective of the channel of employment, that we are seeing that's moving the needle with the hiring manager. The conversation of would you consider it, and then going out and finding someone and then not knowing if someone's available, etc., that becomes a bit complex and can lead to less engagement in that channel for the future. Instead, we're using that as an opportunity to fill the buckets of the client with as much talent as possible, and coming back and presenting that qualified talent. And therefore, we're seeing the hiring manager pragmatically go, oh, there's some great talent here that I wouldn't have thought of. I'm going to engage and have a conversation about it.
Mike, I really like a lot of the conversation today is about skills and capability and potential, and not jobs. So Natalie, I'm not going to wait to take a question from the audience, because we've had someone message through to us, and it's, I think, a great reflection on this question for you. So Natalie, as you've shifted to the approach of selling a career in the airline industry, have you also shifted the profile of workers you're looking for, such as requiring less experience or being more open to workers that don't have the traditional experience you've always looked for in the past? So our audience member is basically wondering, is it a shift in how you market jobs, or a shift in who you are looking for or open to looking for?
All of the above. We're not leaving any stone unturned. So we have definitely, we use 4 key drivers that it seemed to be bringing us some good success. So the first thing is that we've started sourcing our role, but mainly the career differently, so more aggressively. So the tone is different, the story is different. So sourcing has been one of the critical component of bringing the success that we're seeing right now. The second thing, the revision of the job description. So again, Mike mentioned it a few minutes ago. We used to have very technical job description. Now we want to have an engaging job description, and selling to the candidate why they should consider your brand, and what else than just the role exists behind this job description. So people are at the point to say, if I'm going to consider your organization, great, you have great programs and all that, I'm going to accept this job as a station attendant, as a call center agent, as a flight attendant, but I know in 3 years I'm going to want to do something else. And before I commit to you, I want to understand what my future from a career perspective could look like. So we've been, promoting that as well. We revise our talking points, because the recruiter create that personalized experience with your candidate. So, we know that our recruiters, obviously, most of them haven't had the chance to experience the role that they have to sell. So talking points are critical. So we worked very actively with the branches that live and breathe those operational roles mainly, and help us craft those talking points. And of course, we put some kind of a marketing spin to it, but to get to the core of what the role is all about. So the candidate fully understand what they're signing up for, but in a very enticing way. And the two other elements that I want to mention, we moved away from skill-based interview to behavioral interview. What you have to understand in our business, 85% of our workforce is unionized. So every unionized candidates that we bring as an employee at Air Canada receive proper training. So we train those people, with maybe the exception of the licensed mechanic. Obviously, there is, a few distinctions, but I would say flight attendant, call center, station attendant, passenger service agent. So we train for all those unionized roles. So we want to make sure who we're bringing, it's okay if they don't have all the skills we're looking for. We're going to train them for, but they need to have the set of behaviors and values that are aligned with what we look for in terms of a future ambassador of our brand at Air Canada. So that was also a big shift. And the last element is that speed of execution. We know that by the time we extend an offer to a candidate, they probably have 3 other offers on the table. So that was really clear. So with the exception of the safety critical position, we make on the spot job offer, verbal offer to all the candidates following a successful interview. Conditional in some cases to medical, linguistic, security background check, of course. But we kind of we brought that last step of the process early on into the funnel in order to kind of secure that candidate, so they know, and they know that they've been successful, that we're interested in their candidacy, and the rest, we kind of process the rest as technicalities, right? So that has been a big shift for us as well.
I love that. It's that focus on finding the human potential, and once you find it, you grab it. So it'll be the acting in speed in this marketplace today. So I'm going to move us along to the last trend. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them in the chat. But this one all focuses on the shift, build, buy or borrow strategies. I think, Mike, you've talked a lot to that already in terms of looking at all of the talent out there today and how can you get the work done through any type of talent that is suitable for the organization. But we've really seen that, the acceleration of digital transformation in companies, and now that look to drive the highest level of workforce agility across all those talent types. And I think I've loved listening to Natalie today across that whole employee life cycle from before they start and right through to where they may transition from the organization. But we are seeing that 71% of organizations plan to shift more work to contingent project or contract this year. And I think that's that evidence of needing to engage different type of talent, act with speed. And it is a it is a high and a 15-point increase from last year. There's a lot of focus on reskilling at the same time. Natalie, you mentioned that, is that you want people to come in and understand that 2-3 years on, how do you start to reskill for the next role, and what's your next step in your career path? So, Natalie, how is Air Canada really embracing this level of flexibility and agility to drive growth, and how are you optimizing the mix and getting that kind of balance of internal mobility and external attraction right?
It's been a challenge, to be very transparent. Based on the nature of our industry. We're fully operational. So a pilot needs to report to work, a flight attendant needs to report to work, the gentleman, the employee in the baggage room need to report to work. So how do you make this possible in an environment that is fully driven on managing a day-to-day operation? So it's definitely been a challenge along the way. So there were, at the beginning of this journey, there was a lot of opinions on the topic. Of course, looking at this and being forced to venture into a zone that we never had to, the first instinct was, well, it's not possible. We're an airline. It's not possible for us. And then we say, well, you know what? We need to, the status quo is not going to cut it. So we need to do better. So what we can do differently. So what we started to do was, we've started to take every single role at Air Canada, unionized management, every single position that we have, and we start creating categories of flexibility, of work flexibility, if you want, and really pushing our leaders to think outside of the box to say, okay, maybe you never thought that role was possible remotely, but you know what? If some of the employees have been able to conduct part of their work remotely, it's because it can be done. It might not be suiting for your own comfort level, but that's irrelevant at this point. Can the work be accomplished remotely, partially remotely, 100% remotely, or not remotely at all? So we start categorize every single job. So just to give you an example, IT. So IT has been categorized that we believe that our IT team can work 100%, remotely all the time. If they want to come in, or if you need them to come in for a meeting for different reasons, we fully understand that. But they've been in that bucket where we believe, due to the nature of the work, they can work remotely. A flight attendant, pilots, obviously, they're at the other end of the spectrum. We need them to come to work. However, when we introduce the flex days, like we said, so we have a special provision for the 100% needed at work kind of role, where those people, as long as they give us 2 weeks notice, they can flex their schedule. So even though, they have kind of a role that requires them to be in the operation and reporting to work, we provide other type of arrangement to show, to our appreciation and create some value to them as it relates to having more flexibility in the schedule that they had before. So, and we took every single role. So some role, people can work 25% of the time remotely, some other roles 50%, some other roles 75%, all the way up to 100%. So that's kind of how we approach that. It forced the leadership team to move totally outside of their comfort zone, because we were not wired this way. And I have to say, again, very transparently, it was not even part of our culture. Everybody used to report to work 5 days a week, and it was almost to the point that, God forbid, if you would ask to work remotely a couple of days a month, people kind of look at you funny. That was just the nature of our industry. We're fully operationally driven, and we're in the people industry and interacting with people, and we used to be in the office all the time. So that was a huge shift. But we're there, and there's definitely a lot of appreciation from an employee as to the progress we made thanks to the pandemic. So there's not only negative things that came out of the pandemic, I can tell you, because if we would have tried to do this without the pandemic, it would have simply be almost impossible to achieve that at Air Canada. So here's my
I think you're exactly right. So many amazing things learned and so much progress made. And I think it's got to be up to all of us as leaders and human capital leaders not to reverse back into, really take advantage of all those lessons and powerful things that we've brought to our businesses. So we are nearly at wrap up. I am going to ask Mike one last question. Mike, as a CEO of a rapidly growing business where we're really accelerating every day to support our customers, how do you really encourage human capital leaders to collaborate with their C-suite executives to drive organizational growth as we move forward? And like we said, let's not drop back into some before pandemic. Let's keep those lessons learned and keep progressing. What's your last final tips for today?
Yeah, I think it's no secret, Lou, that a number of organizations are certainly feeling that they're being restricted on their growth ambitions at the moment due to their inability to find the right talent. The statistic on 1 in 4 having profit impacts is obviously a real takeaway of that. My honest advice is that there just needs to be an increased frequency of cadence and communication and collaboration between C-suite and TA and HR leaders. One of the ways that I think I've seen this work typically well within organizations is aligning on what ideally the long-term plan looks like for this year, saying, this is what our people plan looks like for the next 12 months. Let's run some scenarios of what could happen and how that 12-month plan might change. And that includes things like how many people per business line, the locations that you would like them in, the expected costs of doing so, the role that each department has to play in onboarding and executing on that strategy. And then, in addition to that, they're instituting fortnightly or monthly collaboration meetings. And these are truly re-collaboration meetings where they're saying, this is what's happening in the market. And as a result of that, we now need to look at, should we still have those people in the area that we were thinking of having them previously? There's been a change in compensation with our competitors. And I think the tech companies did a good job of this. They were looking at how do I get out of the Bay Area in the US to find some other talent? But during COVID, there was a real drop off in those HR tech startups. So in an agile way, they went back to the Bay Area. They picked up a significant amount of IT talent. And now that shift is coming back, and they're now flipping again to go back out into the Midwest or into Eastern Europe to find those hubs of talent that are outside of those London and San Francisco Bay areas. But ultimately, I think it comes down to creating clarity and alignment on what the long-term goal should be, what part each function plays in getting there, and then just being really agile in understanding the market shifts. If there's one thing that TA and HR can do, it's being more proactive and frequent in communication around the challenges that they're facing and the part that business leaders can play in helping them.
Thanks, Mike. I think that's a wonderful wrap up. We have had one more question, and Natalie, I'm going to, we've run out of time, but we're going to record it down, and when we send out the follow up to today, we will get a reflection from Natalie, because it's all about how do you really educate hiring managers pretty much to look beyond the boundaries of what you see in a job description and get them on board to expand their thinking of what are the types of candidates they could be looking at to expand their talent pool. So we'll answer that one as part of our feedback coming to and after the event today. So let's move forward and wrap this up. It's been such a wonderful conversation today with Mike and Natalie. A huge thank you to you both. We look forward, there was a couple of other critical issues that we saw today. There's that gap around diversity and really seeing diversity strategy is so important to companies, but how those hiring practices really delivering on the most diverse and inclusive workforce. So we look forward to bringing that back in our next Talent Navigator series. And I'd love to say a big thank you again to Mike and Natalie, and a big thank you to our audience. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.